Hey there, Freeform. It's Vania here from the Wellington location. Welcome to my kitchen. So a lot of you have been asking for us to put out more nutrition and food related content. So I hope you enjoy our first attempt at this. Now before I go on with today's recipe, please scroll down, hit that like button to let us know that this is something that you're interested in and would like to see more of. And also subscribe as well to our channel to be informed whenever we upload a new video. Alright, so today I'll be making for you guys chicken congee. So congee is something that my grandmother used to make for me for breakfast when I was growing up. It was a popular Asian kind of breakfast dish. So I decided to, show you guys how to make congee because over the years working as a trainer, a common question that I've been asked is, what can I eat for breakfast? What can I eat that's not eggs? Because there's a lot of people with egg allergies these days, and the standard North American breakfast tends to be high on the carb side and a lot of times high on sugar as well, to the point where it's probably more like dessert rather than an actual meal. And congee is something that I've always wanted to try and sort of recommend, but didn't necessarily have enough time to kind of explain what it was and how to make it. So hopefully, you guys enjoy learning about something new and try it out. So I have here 2 chicken breasts. We're going to start off with kind of poaching the chicken in water, and it'll kind of make a chicken broth as well as you're doing this. So I have here 2 boneless or skinless bone-in chicken, because that's kind of what was on sale this week at the grocery store. Basically, we'll just pop that into the pot, cover it up with water. And just heat it up on the stove. So while we're waiting for our chicken to cook, let's talk a little bit about what congee actually is. So congee is basically a rice porridge. You would use a lot more water than you would normally to cook rice, and that kind of turns the rice grains absorbs a lot more of the water, and it kind of becomes almost like an oatmeal kind of consistency. So some things that you want to be aware of is what type of rice that you may want to make. So I have here jasmine rice, which is kind of like a longer grain rice. So the type of rice that you use is important because it can change the amount of water that you need to use. So, another type of rice that I kind of like to use is what's called Calrose rice. So it's a little bit shorter, and I like using that one for congee because it's kind of starchier, so it ends up making more of a thicker consistency by the end. So if you were using that kind of rice, you'd need a little bit more water compared to a less starchy rice like jasmine rice. And a good rule of thumb is generally for every cup of rice, you'd use maybe 7 to 10 cups of water depending on your desired consistency level. I generally like my congee to be sort of like a thicker consistency, so I tend to go lower on the water range. So if this is your first time trying it out, I definitely recommend starting off with less water because it's a lot easier to just add more water to thin it out a bit at the end if you like it a little bit thinner and consistent. So you definitely don't need to be cooking chicken or have chicken stock when making congee. If you're vegan or vegetarian, you can definitely cook congee just simply with water and a little bit of salt. That's one of the reasons why I like congee so much. If you're making a big batch of just plain congee, like you would make a big batch of rice, it's a really good base for you to eat with various different toppings. So for instance, last night I ordered Chinese food for takeout and I have some fish and greens left over, so that's really a good way for you to use up any leftovers that you might have. So if you're vegan or vegetarian, another option would be fermented tofu that I have. This you can find at any Asian grocery store. So fermented tofu, it's really salty, and you can find versions that are spicy as well, like this one is, but there's a plainer version that doesn't have any spice, and it's really soft. I would liken the consistency of this to something similar to like blue cheese kind of thing. So super soft, very little resistance at all when you bite into it. So you can get fairly creative and eat congee with quite a lot of different things. And obviously various vegetables as well. So I'm gonna chop up a green onion here so that I can have that ready for topping up that final dish. Other common Asian kind of ingredients would be to use some sesame oil and soy sauce afterwards. So if you're going to be using soy sauce, I'd recommend, not salting the congee too much, because you're going to be getting a little bit of salt from the soy sauce as well. Alright, so that's all ready. Alright, so the chicken should be about ready now. So I'll just remove it out of the pot. And alright, so the chicken's all cooked and ready. So we'll just set it off to the side, let it cool off as we cook up the rice in the congee. So before we add it into the pot, I'm just gonna rinse it off here. Now essentially you want to rinse the rice a couple of times until the water runs relatively clear. Alright, so we'll just add our rinsed rice back into the pot where the chicken was cooked. Give it a quick stir. So we'll just let that simmer on the stove for about an hour. Now, as you probably noticed, I didn't exactly measure the water that was left over from poaching the chicken that was in the pot. So, that just shows you how sort of easy and kind of foolproof that cooking congee can be, depending on how the consistency of the porridge actually looks in about 45 minutes to an hour. I'll probably add a little bit more if there wasn't enough to my liking. Now some of you may be going, hey Vania, an hour's a long time to wait. What about early morning during the week when I don't have that time to cook up some congee before having to go to work, and having to get the kids ready for school and all that. Although I guess these days it's all at home right now, but hopefully in the near future, we'll be having to deal with those kinds of things. So, if you have any leftover rice, that can be a great way to kind of use it as a bit of a shortcut and use up any leftovers that you might have. So again, I ordered Chinese food for takeout, so I do have some rice left over in the fridge. All right, and as we wait for my congee that we're cooking with raw rice, I'm gonna show you guys how to use leftover rice as well to speed things up a little bit more. So I'm using a smaller pot, and I'm going to be making a little bit less than what I have cooking on the stove there, because it's just me and my husband, and I don't want to be eating congee for a full week. And again, I'm not going to really measure anything, just to show you sort of how easy things can be. So let's say that was about 1.5 cups of rice. Now, since we have fully cooked rice, you won't necessarily need as much water, because it's already cooked. It won't be absorbing very much more. So I'm going to start with, let's say, a 1-to-1 ratio. And this might be a little bit too much water, but we'll see how it goes. So again, we're just gonna let that come up to a boil and then turn the heat down and let it simmer for a bit. All right, so our raw rice congee has now been simmering for about 45 minutes. As you can see, you can start to see the grains a little bit more. There's a little bit less water that's still in the pot. And then over here is our leftover rice congee. So you can see it's a little bit thicker. And actually, I could probably add a little bit more water or so before that's ready. So now after adding a small splash of water, and it's been maybe a minute or two afterwards, and you can see that there's a pretty nice consistency there. This is what you're aiming for when you're making congee. And again, based on personal preference, you can add a little bit more water if you do prefer a thinner consistency. So our leftover rice congee is already done, and if we look over here to the raw rice congee, we still have a ways to go, but we're getting there. So our congee should be ready in just a few minutes, and while we're waiting for that, it's time to shred the chicken. Now I always start off shredding with a couple of forks, but it always ends up being a lot easier if I just use my hands. Yeah, this is taking too long for me. So, yeah, it's always good to get dirty while you're cooking. Obviously, my hands are clean though. So once you've shredded all this chicken, you have a couple of options. You can either save it at the very end and just top the congee off with the cooked chicken, or if your chicken has cooled down a little bit too much and you want to heat it up a bit more, you can also add it back into the pot with the congee for a couple of minutes to heat it up as the congee finishes up cooking. And I will probably add it into the pot because my chicken has cooled down a little bit. Alright, so our congee is finally done, and as you can see, there really isn't much of a difference between the leftover rice congee compared with the raw rice congee. So you're really not missing out on much by and using pre-cooked rice. But this one is thicker right now because it has been sitting out for an extra 10-15 minutes while we waited for the raw rice congee to finish cooking. So to complete the dish, I'm just gonna sprinkle on some green onion here that I very and if you have some sesame oil, sprinkle a little bit of that, and some soy sauce as well to taste. Alright, there it is. Chicken congee. So hopefully you learned a few things, maybe inspired you to try it out, trying something a little bit different, something new. As you can see, it's relatively simple. I didn't measure anything really except for the 1 cup of raw roast, and you can very easily adjust how much water you're using based on what you like in terms of the consistency of the congee. So thanks for watching, guys. If you do end up making congee, take a few photos, tag us on Instagram so that we know that you're making congee. And again, please hit that like button down below so that we know that you're wanting more content like this, and we'll keep making more recipe videos, as well as subscribe so that you don't miss out on any new videos that we might be posting. Thanks.